When I first moved to where I live now, it's an old farmhouse. And
Color.
when there was this gorgeous magnolia tree that was purple in bloom,
Action.
and walking inside this old 1930s property, I was relieved that it wasn't updated.
This is Improv in Real Life. I'm Jude Treder-Wolff. I've worked in mental health for 40 years, and in that time, the world has changed completely. Technology has transformed how we communicate, connect, even how we work. But in our relationships, change doesn't happen that fast. That's where improv comes in. Improvisers learn to create together without a plan, and they do that by learning a set of skills. Anyone can learn these skills, and they translate directly to life. In this podcast, we'll explore how improv can help us navigate the speed of life. And together, we'll explore how to face change with creativity, agility, and a sense of play.
When I turned 30, I really felt like it was a milestone. My career was really just starting to get some traction. I'm in love, which is great, and it's going well. But I've been through enough painful breakups to know that does not mean the relationship is going to work out. And this guy I'm dating has these very impressive friends. One is the chief of psychiatry at a hospital in New York City. One is a professor at Harvard, is a playwright. These people love him, and I want them to like me. So when he invites me to go on a ski trip with them, I'm thinking, okay, I've never skied in my life, partly because it's expensive to ski and I have one entire paycheck that goes to pay for my student loan. I also don't like heights. I don't like moving fast, high. I don't like defying the forces of gravity. I kind of think that that's spitting in nature's eye. And if you defy the forces of gravity, gravity will win. I'm not a physical risk taker. I'm just not that person. I don't, and also here you put these 20-pound boots on your feet and then you put waxed planks attached to the boots and you just like go screaming down a mountain. How does this end? Not well for me. And also, I have nothing to wear, no ski outfits to my name. So of course I say to him, I would love to go on a ski trip with you. And he's going to pay for it. And he takes me shopping to Ski Warehouse on Long Island. I have to say, it was worth it just for the outfit. It was adorable. So here I am at ski school in Colorado at 7:30 in the morning. Everybody in the class has not yet graduated high school. I'm the only person that has graduated high school. The instructor looks like he's doing his gap year before he chooses what college he's going to go to. He's gorgeous. He looks like Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the Marvel comic movies, and he has the energy of a Zen master. And because I'm the shakiest person in the class, when they ride the ski lift, he rides with me. The minute that thing starts moving, I begin to panic. I start crying. I'm shaking. He takes my hands in his hands and he makes me look him in the eye. I'm looking at Chris Hemsworth's eyes, his blue Zen master eyes. And he says, Jude, just remember who you are. It's okay. It's okay. Jude, what do you do for a job? What do you do for work? And I say, I'm a therapist. I'm weeping. And he says, okay, good. So you know what it's like to help people face their fears. That's probably what you do as a therapist, right? I'm just, yes. And I feel like I'm going to die. And he says, good for you. Good. This was a big risk you took taking this class today. I'm like, yes. And I'm like, never let go of my hands, Chris Hemsworth. Never let go of my hands. And he skis me off of the chairlift and then kind of guides me in this dance that we do. He never leaves my side. It's just side to side. He teaches me how to shift my weight side to side as we go gradually, slowly across the mountain, not down, but across, and then across. Something I never knew that's how it's done. And as we're doing this, I feel, of course, he must never leave my side, but I also feel why people like this. It's fun. After class is over, I take the tow rope up and down that bunny hill, and I go up and down by myself for the whole afternoon. The second day, same. By the third day, my boyfriend, everybody's getting ready for their early morning because they get up at insane o'clock in the morning, eat a big breakfast so they can hit that mountain at basically sunup. And I say, I really don't think I want to go to ski school today. And he says, you know what? I get it. You really tried. You really gave this a good go. I don't think this is for you. And I say, it's so not for me. And he's fine with it. And he said, what are you going to do today? And I say, well, okay, I don't like skiing, but I do love shopping. And there's a trolley that I can take into Vail. And that is what I do. I take this trolley. I go to the art museums. I write in my journal, drink a lot of coffee. I make dinner for all of them before they come back. And I realized it was a risk to say no to this trip. It was a risk to go on this trip. It was a risk to try skiing, something I didn't even really want to do at all. And it ended up that I realized we don't have to like the same things. And his friends don't have to, well, they did end up liking me, but I didn't have to prove myself to his friends. A lot of good things came out relationship-wise just from trying to like something that he wanted me to do. And that's what's important about risks. We can try them, and out of just the activity of doing it and facing the unknown, we might discover some unexpected gifts. So that's why my conversation today with Ed Reggi, an applied improviser who works in the field of education, is so important and fun. Because he goes into worlds where people are very risk averse, where taking a risk is difficult and challenging, and people need some practice in taking risks and then seeing how it plays out. And improv is really wonderful for learning to do that and stretching those muscles. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by LifeStage. LifeStage provides opportunities for people to gain skills and knowledge for navigating today's uncertain world. The capacity for creativity, connection to new ideas and other people, collaboration, and community building. For more information, visit lifestage.me.
Welcome to Improv in Real Life, Ed Reggi, the fabulous.
Wow. Thank you for that. I hope I'm fabulous. I try to be.
Well, my experience with you, Ed, so far, we're colleagues through the Applied Improv Network.
That's right.
We both share this idea that improvisation has applications to being more or better or an expanded version of a human. I'd love for you to talk to us about your philosophy about that, about how improvisation changes us.
Yes, I think for sure. Well, let me say, I came into improv, I was literally studying at a very young age, early age, as an actor. And I don't think that's unusual for a lot of people, but I do think it shaped the way I kind of think of improv still today, is that we're given that permission to be someone else. Actors get to work on this idea, this really kind of, noble, crazy idea that we could become different people. Not even people, different things. And I think it's that profound permission that I experienced at a very early age, studying to be an actor, a young actor, and then followed it throughout my life. I think that really shapes this idea of where I'm giving people permission in the room when I'm doing my thing. I'm giving them permission to be someone else, to try it on. They don't have to love it. They may just like it for a little bit, but I think it gives them this sort of sense of, what would it be like? A new reality. I don't know if that really answers your
understand.
question.
Yes, I understand completely. Which brings us to the theme of our conversation here about your work with people in worlds where there is a script, there is in schools a curriculum. In any kind of training situation, there are expectations of goals and objectives and how you're going to get there. And I know that drawing on your own experience is always our first line of self-knowledge. And I remember for me, the idea that it's understanding a different way of getting to the same goal is a very different routing through improv. And that in the end, I became a much more fluid musician, storyteller, speaker, everything. I did achieve that, but it took a lot of practice of the old way of thinking. Oh, but it has to be memorized. Oh, but it has to be wrote, and so on and so forth. So it's a wonderful topic that you have here today to talk about creative risk as a way of approaching the same goals, which is for teachers to teach and so on and so forth. So tell us about what you're doing in that world, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I think as the performer in me, I've been performing, I still perform. And so the performer in me, the actor, the musical theater, hired to do shows, and I think along the way, I always was that actor in the cast. A lot of time in the union, they require sometimes on our off day to go to a school. And people don't know this, but a lot of times in touring shows, they'll have a down day, Monday or sometimes Tuesday, and they'll say hey, we have school down the block, and they would love for some of us to go in and work with and I mean, I'm talking about third graders, first graders, eighth grader, you name it. And I was always the one that would be like, I'll do it. I'll do it, and most of the other ones, they were like, good luck with that. So I always was not trained as a teacher, but I was eager to go in. So that's the setting. And I would have students go up to start an activity, no talking, just do an activity. So they might start pulling the string of a lawnmower and pushing the lawnmower. And I would watch that third grader believe they were in a lawn. And then the game goes. The next person they don't ask questions. They don't shout out. It's not charades. They just go up and join in that activity, doing something else. So what else would happen in the garden, in the yard? So they have to do a lot in that game, that simple game of nonverbal. They are managing, not asking permission. First off, they raise their hand, they go up. They may be wrong. I mean, that is huge for a child. It's huge for an adult that they may be wrong. But they go up and maybe one starts watering, and then the next little girl goes up and she's planting flowers. You could see it. But I watched in the back. The teacher often, not always, but if one child went up there and was doing, I don't know, something completely like you could tell they're doing surgery. I mean, literally, you could tell they're sewing some kind of like they're stitching up. They would stop. The teacher would stop and say, no, what are you doing, Timmy? And they would say, well, I'm performing surgery. And everyone would sort of look, and it just fell apart the moment. So I realized very early on that I've got to find ways to make sure that and I don't blame the teacher. I mean, they just were trying to help. Maybe Timmy always goes up and does, he's sort of receiving he's getting partial information and he's acting on it. The point is that I had to find ways, like, how can I help both the teacher sit in that moment and find ways to side coach? I mean, that's a direct term that Spolin uses, but how can I do that and coach it and not shut the whole experience down?
It's a complex thing to have to do, and that you're training then as an improviser and as an improv coach, going into worlds where, as just addressing that scene that you just described, where people are getting up and doing an activity non-verbally and adding to that world. So somebody's making an assumption, I think they're doing this, and so I'll do this with them. And I love that exercise. We've done that exercise in medical environments.
Yes.
And the more precise someone is, speaking of surgery, so if somebody goes in and it looks like they're doing surgery, but someone else thinks that they're cutting up a turkey.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be a very different world. And I think the wonderful gift that improv is giving there, and there's so much richness to talk about in terms of creative risk, as your topic is that how do we make adjustments in that world without shutting the whole thing down, like you said? And the teacher really didn't have any other tool.
That's it.
Or idea. And what your work is about is providing a whole range of resources and tools for a teacher, for example, when you go into schools or environments like that, right, where they would have a repertoire of ideas of what to do in that situation so that we don't shut down imagination and still realize the learning goal.
That's exactly it. Because the teacher has that goal to help that, I use the name Timmy, but it could be any child. That's the beauty of being in that classroom. There is a goal, and they are there. These teachers do it with little pay and so much work on their backs. They have to really reach goals. And how do I do it and not stifle? I don't know if you're familiar. I don't want to shift this conversation, but early on, I had a colleague that worked a lot around Harvard's Project Zero. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Project Zero has been around, over 50 years now. And Harvard, the education, I think it was started originally out of the graduate education department. This was the same challenge they faced. They said, how can we help teachers reach their goals, their learners' goals? How can they do it and give guidance, but not shut the student down early on? Because they knew that if they, constantly shut the student down, we're going to have challenges and problems with everything in the classroom. So they searched for a model, and where they ended up was going across the way to the fine arts at Harvard. They went to the artists. And I'm talking painters, ceramicists, potter, everyone that was physical sculptors. And they watched them give very important information to their students on line, on shape, on contrast. These are things that are really measurable and yet not shut down. And this is where they came up with their model, See, Think, Wonder, which, when I heard about it first, it's called See, Think, Wonder. You could use Hear, Think, Wonder. But it gave me a model that worked so well with the improv. In fact, I feel like it's just an extension of improv, the way to hear people, see people, what they're doing, and out loud share with them what you think they're doing, because you're like revealing. So right now you're nodding, you have your hand on your cheek and your chin. So that makes me think that you're listening to me, Jude, and you're nodding. So you're listening attentively.
And then what do you wonder?
Well, that's the best part. The wonder, we get to sort of, it's kind of a weird, the wonder part is where if you said to me, Reggie, I'm not really doing that. I have a pain in my tooth today. You're kind of holding the side of your cheek and listening. But if you said, Ed, I'm not doing that. I have a little bit of a pain. I didn't want to talk about it. We're doing this podcast. Now that you brought it up, I have to talk about it. I would then say, I wonder, that's where I give you feedback, so that I wonder if we should take you to the dentist. In other words, it could go in many directions. I wonder if you could maybe, is there something we could do so that you could hear me better or listen better without the pain? So the wonder is feedback. It's in the moment feedback to kind of almost align what I saw and heard to what you truly were doing. Now, if you're thinking, then we could just keep moving forward. If I was accurate in my assessment, it's the most simplistic thing, but it's so hard to break down what people see and hear without leaping to a thought. In other words, what it does, it trains us to kind of just see things for what we see them, just hear them for what we hear them, and be able to process that and then share it back to whoever we're trying to give feedback or learn from or have a conversation with.
Oh, and I think that the exercise alone, it's a simple exercise, see or slash hear, depending on what environment you're in or whether the person can see. So see slash hear, think, meaning that's impacting me. And and then expressing that allows us to then dialogue from that. And if you adjust it and said, so if I said, so my reality would be, well, when I'm on screen, I'm very self-conscious about my face. And so I give myself a pretend facelift, which is not that is pretty much an unconscious thing that I hold my face up a little bit because, and when you said it, I was like, oh yes, I'm aware. That's why I do that. So then I don't know what that makes you think, but you could. So if I say, oh no, I'm just kind of imagining if my face just had a little bit more lift, like when I was younger, what does that make you wonder?
Well, it makes me wonder. My wonder would be, I wonder if you know that in Zoom, we're on Zoom platform right now, if you know that there's great filters that could youthify your face. If you want to, there's some awesome features.
Oh, they're being used, my friend. They're being used, and I'm still doing this. So, it's so funny. It's just such a funny thing that I do have a very specific reason that I unconsciously touch my face at my cheekbones, like you mentioned. And anyway, but what a fun, I'm actually going to practice that exercise. I forgot about that one. Now, if you do that with children, when I'm around little kids, I think that is, if you're an improviser, there's a natural tendency for us to observe, say it out loud, and then stay open to what it is they are actually experiencing or want to express. And that then is the yes. And there's a little risk involved in putting that out there in terms of the creative risk, right? That we have to be okay with, well, that's not what I thought at all.
That's exactly it. And it's a profound light bulb moment for a lot of the teachers I work with. Because sometimes, if we're retelling, a lot of times I base everything I'm doing in the room, only because we're in schools and it really is nice to do. I base everything in a book. Even if it's just we're going to do our own version of the book, there's a book somewhat, the characters, that it's easier for the students too. If we're doing the snowy day, they already know Peter, the classic. I don't know if you're familiar with the classic, the snowy day, where Peter, it's snowing outside. He goes outside, he draws with a stick in the ground his name, he puts footprints in the snow. Ezra Jack Keats is the author of this classic book, been around for many, many years. So we might use that as a launching. I'm not reading the book. I'm never reading the book. I'm taking elements from the book so I could get them to really get the setting, the who, the where, the what, the actions. But it's funny because when I stop and when Peter in that book tries to hide a snowball, what I love about that book, he hides a snowball. His mom yells out, "Peter, it's time to come back inside." And I get all the kids to do this. Peter, they're all doing, and they put the snowball in their pocket, in his pocket. He comes inside, and later on, after eating, after taking a bath, going to bed, he sneaks to this coat, pulls out wet water. It's gone. And I expand on the story. Do you think his mom took it? Where do you think it went? We explore all this. I wonder. It's a wonder, right? But what I love about it is the feelings. How do you think I'm constantly getting them put their feelings in their body? Because I'm just going to be on a little bit of a soapbox here. We are in a time period right now where so many of them are working on, and I'm going to hold up my phone. They're working on digital devices, and they are disconnected from sometimes their physical and how they feel. They're not showing it. It's not obvious how they feel, right? Because they don't need to do that. I don't need to do that if I'm on a device all day and I'm talking to even my mother, grandmother, whoever. I don't need to really have the emotion visible. I don't even have to show it. So I try to get them in their face, and here they are doing a gesture. I have the whole room, 15, 20, show me how you would feel. And they're all doing in their face, and a lot of them are doing sad. Some of them are like even showing anger. But I'm not kidding you, it always happens. There's this one or two or three that are just no affect. And the teacher, how would you feel? How would you feel? And I have been taught by them, the teachers, to say, "Oh, no, Mr. Reggi, that is," I'm going to use Timmy again, but that's Timmy's anger. That's his anger. And I went, oh, okay, all right. And I say all this because they're learning, the teacher is learning in that wonder. Everyone has a nuance. Yes, there's maybe a sort of this recognized standard of emotions. I always say in the hospital with the nurses chart, you probably know this better than I do, that chart the patient is feeling. It's got like 5 faces and they circled the face, But sometimes in a room, like in a classroom, which is a little community, they have to learn the nuance of anger or furious or love or fear. It's going to be subtle. And I love that they are able to pick that up. And to me, that's where the seeing, the processing, that teacher that does that has done the work. They may not call it, "Oh, this is what I see. It makes me think." They have done the work without even saying those words. They've done it. And that's, to me, my hope and goal when I'm in the room for the teachers that don't see it in the student. What is that student's version of fear? Maybe it's not as obvious as the other 10. It's a risk because they may be wrong. That's the part. I have teachers say this when I'm just in a room full of just teachers, when I'm doing a professional development. They might say, "Well, Mr. Reggi, if I'm wrong, if I say that to a third grader, if I say, 'Well, I saw you, I heard you,' it made me think you're mad. It made me think you're really furious. You're going to throw something like you did whatever. And if I'm wrong, I just revealed I'm vulnerable to my student, and I can't do that." And I went, why not? Why not? So it's this language in this permission of giving them to take a risk.
Yeah, so now we're on the tightrope of creative risk taking, and what you're saying about teachers observing and being willing to be engaged with their students around how the student feels. It seems like that should be a natural human reaction to other human beings that you see every single day. And yet teachers, and it isn't only teachers, but we're in that world right now, get sort of programmed out of it and sort of busy. We get very busy and stressed. And that piece of allowing yourself to be impacted uniquely when you have 20 kids in front of you, uniquely by each of them, there's a certain amount of plasticity that has to be happening in somebody's mind and heart. And of course, it can be achieved. People can grow that. Some people,
Yeah.
it comes naturally. And I know
Yes.
that improv
Yes.
is a way to make that more accessible. So your work is, as I understand it, is going in and working with people to increase that ability, right? To
Yes. Yeah.
expand it. So let's talk about an exercise you might do with teachers they're stressed, they have a curriculum, they have objectives they have to meet. And here comes Ed Reggi, the great, to work with them using this unusual method. So what's an exercise you might do that would help teachers to achieve the same goal of the emotional elasticity or connection to students or the ability to take a creative risk?
Yeah. So I use a lot. I call it ACE. It's action, color, emotion. I know a lot of times the word action is substituted for story, color, emotion, but I just easier for the teachers to remember it. ACE, action, and we role play that game not in front of the students, but when I have some one-on-one time with them. It's a very big story spine kind of a story making game where I'll go first, and you're gonna direct me with the words action, color, or emotion. You just say either one of those words, and I'm gonna tell a story. But when you say action, I'm going to just talk about the story, the natural actions in the story, the kind of logical sequence. If you at any point say color, I'm going to, in the story, talk and focus only on the color of the story. Only like the location, the smells, the sounds, the sights, everything around that. And the emotion, if you ever say emotion, I'm going to just be self-reflective in that moment in the story where you stopped me and said emotion. I'm going to talk about all the elements of how I felt and the others. Maybe there were others that were feeling emotions, and you could go back and forth. You could be action, you could be emotion, you could be, So what do you think? Do you want to try that?
I'm ready.
Okay.
So you'll start and then I'll call action, color, emotion.
That's it. Any order you want. Any order you want. Okay, I'm going to just tell a real story that is when I first moved to where I live now. It's an old farmhouse. And
Color.
when was beautiful, there was this gorgeous magnolia tree that was purple in bloom when we saw it. And the clay terracotta tile roof. It felt like I was maybe in a little villa in either Madrid or Italy. It was just a gorgeous sight. And the color of the evergreens that were on the property popped because it was April. And the smells of those pine and all those delicious flowers that come up early spring, the violets, they were just beautiful. And as I walked on the property,
Action.
and as I kept moving throughout the house and walking inside this brick stone old 1930s property, I was relieved that it wasn't updated, meaning it wasn't ripped out, made into like some sort of HGTV show, that it was still the old farmhouse in perfect condition. It was just beautiful to walk through. But what I was amazed at was these cats, these barn cats that lived on the property. And I was concerned about, are they the owners? The owner is not here. We're buying it. But I felt, how could you live with these animals, these barn cats, granted barn cats, but I felt sad for them. Would they miss the couple that lived here for 45 years because they were no longer living here? They had
Action.
moved. So I, of course, got to the part where you sign all the documents and got the keys with my husband and I. We got it. We opened it up. And the first night I was out there with the support of people that do this, trap those cats to neuter and spay them and give them vaccines. And, they weren't the friendliest cats, but it didn't make a difference.
Color.
Because I was so in love with these cats. The cats were beautiful. There was this beautiful older male cat that was like a jaguar, like beat up wound injuries, like scars. And there was this gorgeous all gray, almost blue-gray cat that was the matriarch on the property. We got them to the vet. They got their fixed up, brought them back. And P.S., 1.5 now live in the house. They don't live outside anymore. The female, the matriarch, she lives here because Piper, it's her property. She's lived here longer than we. So
Thank you. Wonderful story.
Isn't it? It's a true story. That's a very true story. I love that game. I love that game because, listen, it doesn't, we're both improvisers and you're really good. You found moments, you found them. And there was a lot of give and take that we were doing. But I love playing that with a first grade teacher, a fifth grade teacher. They're really good at it, actually. But I love playing it when they play it with each other, because I think what it does for me when I observe it, what it does for me, it gives them a tool to realize this is what they do in their classrooms. They are giving these little moments, these little words, these hopefully little words, these ways to side coach their students to draw out of them more of the, I don't want to say answer because there's many answers, but more, how could they solve the problem? Whatever their students are trying to solve, there's not one way. How do you feel about that game, Jude?
Well, there's so many gifts in that experience. So there's attunement to the other person, so that as the person, if I care about you, and I do,
Right.
or you are my student, and I care about us achieving something together, and the outcome might be that you understand the problem better, or you get to the outcome that I think you need to understand this problem and get to a solution. But you can find it in this unique kind of way. So if I care about you, I'm deeply attuned to what you're saying. And I have three choices, which having that structure is very nice. There's only action, only color, only emotion. That's it. And among those three choices, there's such richness that comes out of the other person. So attunement and alignment between human beings opens up all kinds of creativity, that the worry about being right and getting it right and learning something hardcore shuts down our bandwidth. It's very taxing to our bandwidth, our cognitive bandwidth, to learn that way. This way is the pathway of discovery. But you weren't on your own and I wasn't on my own. So as a teacher or a therapist, same. Like I've done an exercise similar to this with clients where people will kind of wander around deflecting off of the real situation that needs to get discussed, or stuck in one perspective, and sometimes just adding a lot of color, like a lot of those details. What do the cats look like? All of that expanding your imagination also expands your emotional bandwidth as well. So that is what, for me as a person playing with you, I felt very connected to you. I felt aligned with you. And I was very engaged by everything that you were about to say, because I didn't know what you were going to say.
Yeah. And just imagine this same, when I'm working again with the teachers, we have time where I'm just with them. And I say, just imagine we take the book we just did last week, or the book they did 2 months ago, bring it back out. They've worked on a book for a while, specifically around certain lessons. And would it be like to have the students kind of do this with each other? Like, just take a book, The Snowy Day. And the book may never talk about the emotions of Peter. Or the mom, what did she feel when she let her child go out and play in the snow? The book doesn't talk about that. And some of the kids will say, like, is he allowed to go out? Like out in the snow? He looks like he's 10, not even 10, 7 in the book. I mean, it's interesting that the youth get, like, my mom wouldn't let me do that. It's
Right.
like, but for them to take the perspective of the characters in the book based on solely what we maybe acted out a little bit, and then they get to kind of fill in the blanks. They probably rely mostly on their personal. When it gets to the emotion, they bring their own emotion into Peter. And that is wonderful. I think there's nothing wrong with that. That is great.
When we read, we're all doing that. We're feeling something the character's feeling. We're going to feel that through our own filters too. Either we've never experienced that and we're just learning about that world for the first time, and therefore the author is doing all the work. But we're also going to experience that through certain filters of that being foreign or new to us, or very familiar to us. You're giving kids the opportunity to inject their own experience into it, to say that out loud, and teach people to trust themselves. Well, I'm wondering if you ever do this with having teachers make up the story and asking to color advance. I'm sorry, I call it
Yes.
color advance, but there's color, emotion, and
Action. Think of ACE, because
Right.
teachers love acronyms. You know how everything is a word. They'll put it up on the board and it's, a word. I have done it with teachers. I think I always start with like having them use a story that they know, only because it's easy. They get good at it. When they get good at it, meaning if you do this a couple of times, you could use a book, you could use a movie, you could use a made up story Absolutely. But it is hard. Listen, I've had many groups. I usually do it in small groups, like they get to work in pairs or even in threes, and then they take turns directing or coaching and then telling the story. And it's interesting because a lot of them will have this sort of we do a lot of, as you know, debriefing is so important in the work that applied improv or applied theater practitioners do. It's really the debrief after the exercise that's more powerful and more, I think, more connecting to the whole point why you're doing it. And a lot of them will share with me that they don't really think about emotion in storytelling. It's like they got the color, they got the action, which is the sequential story, but they will, not all, but a lot of them, sometimes half a room of teachers will say, oh gosh, I really don't dwell on the emotion much. I don't even think about it. And that's okay. I mean, but it makes them think, how do I now incorporate that into my classroom? I think it's the emotion that makes it a story interesting, like compelling. Like if I'm watching a story, if it's a movie, a Broadway show or a play, community theater, when the emotion is either high or there's exploration, it draws us in. And I think the same is true about the classroom. Yes, I think the classrooms can't be just flat, no affect, where it's just like, everything is one note. I'm in there to model the work I'm doing. That's the whole process. I work through it's in the DC area, Wolf Trap. It's a national, I don't know if you're familiar with Wolf Trap. Wolf Trap is very well known for a lot of people on the East Coast because it's the only theater in a national park. I'm going to say that again because it's pretty profound. There's only one theater in a national park in this country, and it's in DC, and it's called Wolf Trap, named after the kind of indigenous area where they would trap wolves. It's a big, gorgeous outdoor theater, and they have an education foundation, and that's who since 2016, 2017, that's who I work through. They have a philosophy of, let's work with the teachers, let's teach professional development and model it. Let's take an art form, not just improv and theater, but all art forms. And how do we model that behavior so that teachers can use it and become better at teaching using arts strategies? That's ultimately where the funding is. And I love modeling that in those classrooms that sometimes are, they may have a nonverbal kid, a nonverbal child, but I have witnessed it, Jude, and I know you have too in the work you're doing, where they'll become verbal. And I'm not saying it's because of me. It's because of the repetition, the games, the storytelling, the animation, the emotion. And the teachers, they're the first to tell me. They're like, oh my gosh, more of that.
Well, I want to inject a couple of thoughts I'm having
Yes.
listening to you about a framing of this that I think is useful for people outside the world we're talking about. The idea that emotion isn't happening is just, emotion is always happening.
Yes.
Just the fact that people don't talk about emotions doesn't mean they're not constantly
Yes.
happening. So what will happen is if we don't tap into them, give them names, and allow for them to be part of any experience, then we develop defenses around them and a mask around them. Then we go around thinking that's what we have to do. That's how you get along in the world, is put on the mask. This is the mask for this world. This is the mask for this world. I'm not safe doing anything else. And the thing about play and an exercise where people have to take a little bit of a risk, but not so much of a risk that they're really going to shut down, but there's enough of a risk that they're highly engaged, listening, and have to be observant and just try. We're not going to have the same kind of ability cognitively to wear that mask or emotionally. And in play, it's okay to get excited. And it's okay to care. So I just want to share this very quickly. I had an experience where, and this is before I really had as much improv training as I do now, but I was grateful for the fact that I'm an experientially minded person. And I got hired to do a training with people in a school, but there were a lot of school social workers as well as staff in general that worked with middle school and high school students. And it was at 8:00 in the morning and no one wanted to be there, including me. But I mean, not because I didn't want to do the work, because 8:00 in the morning, for me to be bright and chipper is a major challenge. And the room it was just lead. There was no warmth toward me.
Yes.
Or warmth toward the obligation that they had to be there. And it occurred to me, somebody said something about, I think the World Series was on. And I just decided we're going to play baseball without saying anything. We're going to do a pantomime baseball game. And it was honestly a crazy idea. It was a crazy idea. I said, you're this team, you're that team. And they got up and they cleared the chairs back and they got up and they pitched and they hit. And if they struck out, they got dejected and they did it and they cared,
They did.
It was so much fun that afterward, then they were much more warm toward me because everybody cares about whether you strike out or you care if you ran your bases.
Yes.
And you can care about that without being weird. But it is a creative risk to act like you care in a game, but it's not so personal. And they had a lot of fun with that. And we talked about how, let's get up. If you get out of your chair and move your body at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's way more interesting than listening to me talk.
Yes. Yes. This is, I don't think it's written in her book, but she says, Viola, when things get bogged down in the classroom, play a game.
Well, I love that idea. And also she'd say, get out of your head and into the space.
Into
and
the
sometimes
space. Yeah.
In a school setting, sometimes the only way to really get into the space is to physically move out of that chair and look at each other and do something weird. And I think that request from me was weird enough. And everybody knows what baseball is. In fact, they were talking about baseball. They all know what it is. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, I think the beauty of that is that you were so in tune. If the World Series was going, you fed them what they already were feeling in their minds and bodies. They were like, or everything is on baseball. So you side coached them.
And they were so happy to do it, and they were happy to strike out, and they were happy to hit, and and so it was like, I was so grateful for that kind of training, just to take a chance, because if they refused to do it, if they were like, I'm not doing that, I would take the hit. Like, it'd be mud on my face. It wouldn't be on them. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with taking that kind of risk, asking people to do something weird and saying, this is really out of range. Let's see if you are up for it. And if not, we'll do something else. So I'm wondering if you have another game for us to do as part of our talk today.
Yes. And this is the other group of people that are just like the teachers in the classroom, who I'm really fortunate enough to work with. We're lucky enough in St. Louis to be the center of the United States. It has a history of a lot of headquarters. Anheuser-Busch, Purina. St. Louis has about 10, 20 headquarters. So a lot of training centers. So very early on, I kind of transitioned into those training centers, doing my same work, the same work that See, Think, Wonder, Hear, Think, Wonder, all of it, right? And what I find a lot is this game is very helpful for these entrepreneurs, innovation teams that are innovating for whatever, fill in the blank. A lot of times Purina, you have people that are trying to come up with the next cat litter product. I don't know. It's crazy to think that, but they do. They got to come up with ideas. If they don't innovate, stagnant, gone. So New Choice, it's a classic game. People call it Say What. People call Ding. We all know it. I love to play with entrepreneurs. New Choice, in a two-person scene where you're saying something, a sentence, and I say New Choice. So you have to say it in a different way. The idea is not to be absurd. If you're at a cafe, I'd like to get a venti, a vanilla, sugar-free latte. New Choice, I'd like to get a grande, mocha latte. New Choice, I'd like to get a donut, please. So you keep it relatively things that would take place. So we could New Choice each other. So when we're going to do a scene, I'll New Choice you. And then when I respond in the character, you could New Choice me. And we'll just play with that.
Great. I got a little hot goss for you about our neighbor, Arthur.
New Choice.
I want to tell you about my multi-level marketing program.
New Choice.
I'd love for you to go to my mom's 80th birthday, please.
Oh, I didn't buy anything. I mean, what do you buy for an 80-year-old? That's the hardest thing.
All you have to do is just come with me and just give me moral support. It's
New Choice.
All I need is for you to buy something expensive.
Okay, I could do that. I have got a fresh new credit card. It has plenty of credit on there. So I'll just head to the most expensive store.
New Choice.
I'll just head to the most expensive market and look for the right food that costs the most. I'll look for the right kind of fish that costs the most and buy that fish and have it filleted and ready to go.
Oh my gosh, that is a stroke of genius because she loves fish.
New choice.
That's crazy that you read that because she loves to serve fish.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great. Okay. Maybe I'll have someone there at the market come and they can actually be kind of a butler, kind of someone that would help out. It would make the party even better.
I think that really would make the party better. It would make the party very, very fancy.
New choice.
It would make the party very elegant.
New choice.
It would make the party kind of weird.
All right. Scene.
Okay.
Scene.
I love that game too.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
And that's just going back to that idea of creative risk. It is when I play it, and I've done, of course, I'm sure you have, like you can't even count the number of times, but it's always still a little bit, there's a little bit of alarm or something. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You know what's the best part about that game? I think what's what you just said. It's like even for seasoned improvisers, I really mean this. You're really working without anything because you're going to erase it all. You know, our brain has given us something to say. We're doing improv. So cognitively, we've delivered something. And now we got to let it go and give something else and then do it again.
So I think it's important to share with people what you believe as a trainer yourself, and I like to filter this in as from my experience as a therapist. What's the usefulness of this in real life, of doing an exercise where you're on the edge like that? Because I can see, I would say as a relationship person, you're really listening, you're saying yes to the other person in that sense, sort of dictating change it. And you're agreeing to that. And I think there's a lot of value in that in terms of connection to other people. What are your thoughts about the value of this in real life?
I find the value, to me, the part is that kernel of letting go. I think it's like, I just thought I gave a nice little brilliant response wrapped up in a bow. And then someone, or you're playing the game, a bell is rung. I got to let it go. And now I've got to do it again. And I could do it again. It teaches that there's not one perfect way. I really believe in this, that improv, if anything we're going to take away from it, it's not about being super clever. It's not about, you don't have to write there's so many perfect ways to get there. There's not one. And I think that, to me, that I love about that game. That game teaches us, roller coaster.
And that you, like you're saying, you can't get attached to an idea.
No, that's it.
And there's a lot of value in that because of life is changing all the time. And there is so much change that is not in our control. It is coming at us. And if we are so clinging to what we thought was going to happen, we will not react in a way that is useful in this moment. So that is something that I think improv is uniquely effective at helping people to get okay with it. That you, like you said, you have to let it go. If you don't let it go, you're behind and you're not even in the moment anymore. And also the question, often when I'm teaching this in just a straight up improv class, but especially if there's mental health people there because they're dealing with change all the time, is like, why am I so attached? Like, why? Why am I attached to why does that even matter?
Right. And the more you play this game, for anybody, not even non-improvisers, when I take it to groups, whether it be teachers or whoever, the more they play it, they tell me, and I think this is an indicator that they're playing the game, in a proper way, is that they'll say, like, I'm not invested in anything I'm saying, Reggie. They'll say, like, I'm just there. And because I know someone could say, new choice. And that's good, because how often can we say in life where we're doing things and we're not stuck? So it's got to be black or white, up or down, where we're like fluid. We're fluid.
Right. And we have to let go of performance anxiety because what's being created, like our little scene that we just did, it's not predictable. It's not plannable. And the outcome doesn't even matter. What matters is, did we connect? Did we listen to each other? And how are we changed by that experience?
Yeah. The silliest thing, Jude, is that, that game, I've been in many different improv troupes over the years, in cast ensembles. And I still carry a bell. And everywhere I go, every bag I have, I've got a bell. Sometimes in my car when I'm driving to a location, or maybe even just to Costco, the bell will land in such a way in my bag so that every so often when I hit a bump, it will ring distinctly. Ding! When those moments happen, I'm alone in the car. I'm like, I'm playing the game. I'm playing the game myself.
So
I'll
if you're
just start,
having a thought, you're like, I have to have a new thought.
That's it. That's it. I'm just sort of like, oh, that car cut me off. Ding. Oh, it went in front. Ding. Oh, it's a Toyota. I want to find a parking spot. And I just monologue. I love parking spots when they're closer. Ding. I love them when they're far away. I do this. And my husband is, do you really do it? And sometimes he'll be in the car and I'm like, oh, it's ringing.
That is so funny. And in fact, now I want to put my little bell in my car and go and buy some more of them just to make that happen. Otherwise, we can get really stuck in a rut of our thinking,
Yes,
you know?
Yes. Yeah. It's a great way to kind of let go, let go, like, especially when you're having a day, a thought. We're all like in that right now, I think, in our lives, in the world. It's just great to kind of like let it go.
And be willing to have a new thought, play with it, and then not get too attached to that one either.
Yeah.
I have one final thought. I want to talk about the bell. I got one of those bells I took the medical improv training at Northwestern, and she gives that as a token. Like, she gives you these little gifts at the end of the week. So it means a lot to me, this little bell. And I did a week-long improv for little kids. It was 5 to 10-year-olds. And we used the bell a lot. And the kids at one point, and I'm so protective of it, and I love it so much. And I saw the kids were carrying it around, and I got really scared. And I did one of those what was the thing? See, think, wonder.
Yes.
I saw them holding my bell and crowding around it. I thought they were breaking it or they had broken.
Yes.
And I said, hey guys, what's happening with my bell? And they said, oh, we were shining it up because we know it's so important to you. So they treated it like the sacred object.
Yeah.
They loved it so much. They were shining it and keeping it safe. So thank you for the think, wonder activity.
Love that. I love that.
So Ed, how can people find you if they want to talk more to you or find out about your work?
Of course, my website, edreggi.com. I own the misspellings of edreggi.com too. So you'll get there if you just type in edreggi.com. That really is the best way to reach me. It has, all my info and how to get in touch with me.
Ed, I'm so grateful to you for being on this podcast today. I know it's going to be useful for people, so thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jude, so much. Thank you for the time to play.
That's it for this episode of Improv in Real Life. For more info about our guest and other resources, you can visit our show notes. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're feeling extra generous, write us a review or share with a friend. You can also find us on Instagram at lifestage_Inc. And if you want to dive deeper into these concepts, please connect with me on Substack at Jude Treder-Wolff.
To be continued, to be continued, to be continued.
We need each other now more than ever. We need creativity more than ever. I hope these games and ideas inspire you in some way. And if they do, keep it going. I will too. See you next time.